Hello, I'm Denise Krause, and I'm one of the clinical faculty here at the University of Buffalo School of Social Work, and I'm going to talk to you and demonstrate how you might consider using Zoom to have role plays, especially in your practice classes. Now, with me are 5 advanced year MSW students who also serve as peer teaching assistants in one of my online practice classes. Interventions 2 at the moment. And just a shout out to them because they also will be our colleagues very shortly as they are graduating from the School of Social Work this year. I've asked them to introduce themselves, and Kandis, I think you're first.
Hello, I am Kandis Laruren and I live in Jamestown, New York.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kat Freeman, and I am also from Jamestown, New York.
I'm Kristen Fisher, and I'm coming to you from the basement in Castile, New York.
Hi, I'm Laruren Markos, and I'm from Sarnia, Ontario, Canada.
Hi, my name is Whitney Marris. I am in the DC metro area, more specifically, just moved to lovely Alexandria, hence the boxes.
Thank you, Whitney, and everyone. And really a shout out to you all for donating your time, if you will, to help me with this recording. As online students, they're very familiar with this Zoom platform. And as you heard, none of them are right in Buffalo, where I am in my office at the Amherst campus. So we're going to demonstrate just with a couple of quick examples, how you might consider role plays and what might be useful as a tip with regard to role plays. So in Zoom, we can use simulations, real plays, role plays, activities, exercises. There's really nothing that we do in a seated class that we can't transfer into a Zoom classroom. So these are just a couple of examples to give you an idea. So we first are going to start with an individual interview, a one-on-one, if you will, micro practice interview, where Kandis has volunteered to be the worker and Kat has volunteered to be the client. So Kandis is going to be demonstrating the beginning of kind of a goal-oriented question. So the module is on goals, and we're going to give Kandis a few minutes to demonstrate that with Kat. So I want to ask the rest of you in this class, Laruren, Whitney, and Kristen, when we start to mute both your mics as well as your video. And if you would, I'm going to ask Kristen if you would track what it is that Kandis is doing that's working. And Laruren, if you would track how you think Kandis is being trauma informed. And Whitney, I'm going to ask you to track what it is you think that Kandis is doing specifically in relation to the skill sets on goal setting that we've been talking about. So just a reminder for Kandis and Kat, make sure you unmute your mics. I'm also going to mute myself, and when I come back on, we will stop. And Kandis, just so you know, anytime that you need to pause or to tap out, just let us know and we'll move on. Okay? And Kandis and Kat, once we're all muted, when you're ready, you can start.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Kandis.
So glad that you came today. Are you comfortable? Everything seem okay right now?
Today I'm dealing with this new crisis that we've all been thrown into, and I realized that I am not staying as calm and as centered as I'd like to be, and my productivity has faltered because of that.
So how can I help you today?
I was hoping we could kind of brainstorm things that help me.
All right, you can, thank you. right? I really appreciate you doing this, and I'm going to stop the role play and just talk a little bit about this. So to the instructors who are watching this, right, what we would normally do when we stopped is we'd process it. So we would check in with the person who played the student, who played the worker, and then to the people that I assigned the roles to. Now, one of the tips that I have for you is in Zoom, you have two different views. You have what's called gallery view, which is this. And then there's also something that's called speaker view, where someone who's making sound comes really large on the screen. I think gallery view is much better because speaker view, you also, someone's really big. And so that's a little distracting. So being in gallery view is usually helpful. Notice that I gave other people roles, so it is helpful to think about that, and you could give more than one person a role if you were doing a larger group chat or role play. And the option is there is a chat box which can't be recorded in Zoom, and sometimes you could have people actually track vis-a-vis the chat box what's going on and to have them write some comments. Now that's a bit of a sophisticated skill to do in real time, but that is something that absolutely could be done and useful in a role play. And if you're recording it, then the chat is also recorded, just as an FYI. So assignments, I asked them to be somewhat spontaneous, so I didn't know what Kat was going to be presenting. But if you have kind of a predetermined role play, that you have a case, for instance, that you're asking students to use, it's helpful to send that to them through email or through some portal beforehand, so you can just refresh them before moving in. So the Smith case that I sent you is the one we're going to be using here. So that's useful so that everybody's on track and you don't see people grabbing their papers, or in my case papers, or switching their screen to a different setting. The students here also had some tips, and I just thought if they wanted to share them to future practice or online role play instructors. Kristen, how about you?
Sure. So Denise had mentioned that, of course, once everybody returns, you want to process because that's what we do, of course, as social workers. In a classroom, it's super easy to just start, processing with the people doing the role play and the people doing the observing. In Zoom, it's going to take a couple minutes for everybody to pop back in from their individual breakout rooms, and Denise will walk you through that, and so will Steve in a minute, so don't worry about the breakout rooms, but do wait until everybody's in the class before you start processing, just so nobody feels like they're lost and they have to catch back up.
Thanks, Kristen. Great tip. Laruren.
So I would say prepare for things to not go according to plan. That usually happens when technology is involved, and to do your best to maintain your composure when the inevitable occurs.
Thanks, Laruren. Go ahead, Whit.
There are often, sound or tech or distraction issues that people will face when they're in class or in a session. And generally the instructor will address it. So, if there's someone who has forgotten to mute their mic, for instance, which happens pretty frequently and can be very distracting to people who are trying to learn, the instructor can gently remind everyone to keep themselves muted when they're not actively contributing to the conversation, or actually as the host, you can also mute people yourselves.
Oh, awesome tip. Thank you for thinking of that, Whitney. I appreciate the tips. We have another example, and this is related to more of a meso level and a group role play. And so in this role play, I've asked Laruren to be the group facilitator or group leader, and the other members of the class here today will be in the group. And I'm just going to talk at them as though they were in class and remind them that they had read the case. They You all, if you remember, you're in the MSW student support group, and Laruren is your facilitator. Now, this is your second session, and Laruren is working on the beginning stages of groups, and so she'll be demonstrating some beginning group skills. And this is the second meeting. Now, between your first and second meeting, COVID-19 has just blown up, and you've learned that you will have to move to a distance education model. Maybe your jobs have been disrupted, but things are going on for you. And so Laruren is going to work with you as a group around this. So I'm going to mute myself. Just a reminder to unmute your mics as you're talking. And Laruren, again, you can tap out anytime or pause if you need some brainstorming help around where to go to next. And after I'm off screen, when you're ready, you could start.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our MSW support group. It's lovely to see you again all this week. So a lot has gone on since the last time that we saw each other. This group is a place for you to gather support from each other. And of course, we can discuss whatever you would like to discuss. But in light of recent events, I was wondering if it might be helpful for you to check in around everything that's happening with COVID-19. Is there somebody who'd like to start?
I can start. Yeah, I'm so glad that you actually brought this up, because it's something that as you know, Kat mentioned earlier, I myself have not really expected that I was going to react so severely to this. I have an ill father, and I am in a major city where there are dozens of cases that have been confirmed. And so I feel like I can't really serve the role that I feel like I need to do. And that's really distracting me and from my work and stressing me out in general.
Thank you, Whitney. There's so many layers of this to you. It's very personal. Thank you for sharing. Is there anybody else who'd like to go? I know this is very difficult to talk about. Why is it so difficult, do you think?
I feel very overwhelmed, both my personal, through my work, through stressing about my friends and family and neighbors. I just feel completely overwhelmed that sometimes it's almost too much to talk about it.
There are a
Okay.
lot of pieces.
Awesome. Thank you again for doing this. And, you know, even in this simulated role play to help instructors see what it looks like, one of the things that I was struck by is how your nonverbals really make such a difference in capturing the emotion and intensity of each other. So, you know, thank you. And that is kind of just a point here that even though we're in an online environment, we still can be very present emotionally to both content and process. And Laruren, you certainly demonstrated that. And you know, the tips that I mentioned earlier still hold true here. The difference here is because you have multiple speakers, you have some options. You can use the hand raising feature, you know, just actually have somebody raise their hand. There is also an icon in Zoom that's a hand raising. When the participant list is activated, you can see people's hand raising. So there's options around that. This simulation could also take place for macro practice, right? Community organizing meetings, simulating board meetings. So there are lots of opportunities to do that in this large classroom, but also in a smaller classroom. And I asked Kandis and Kat if they also had tips that they might want to share with instructors here. So Kat, what might be your tip?
My go-to is to add humor into anything that I do to kind of lessen the overwhelming and vulnerable feeling of moving to a different platform, not knowing what's going on in field, not knowing what's going on anywhere. Sarcasm can be useful, but if you have a very dry sense of humor, it may also unsettle students who are not used to seeing you on a platform where you're not right in front of them. So you can lighten the mood, keep it very light and keep it funny. And when there's difficulties, we can all laugh about it. It's okay if someone gets booted off, if someone's signed on in 3 different names, it's gonna be okay.
Thank you, Kat. How about you, Kandis?
I think just like in seated, when you're playing the role of the worker, you feel very vulnerable. Especially when you're online, you feel very isolated. So the anxiety is definitely higher. So I would just remind instructors to normalize the anxiety and be supportive of the person in the worker role.
Wow, very sage advice coming from this group. Thank you. You know, Kristen mentioned earlier about breakout rooms, and I don't have the capacity to record breakout rooms because that's not available on Zoom, so I can't show you what that looks like. But the essence of breakout rooms are smaller rooms where students can engage in small activities. So if you're teaching a class of 20 and you want to break them into groups of 4, you can do that relatively easily. And Steve Sturman is also making some recordings on how to create and use the breakout rooms. Just a couple of quick points. Breakout rooms, when students are in those rooms, the instructor can jump from room to room, just as if you were in a seated classroom and you were walking from group to group. You can create random, or you can actually pre-select students into groups if you need some consistency over time. So you have a lot of flexibility both in this large group as well as in the small group. So I hope this was helpful. Again, thank you to those of you who volunteered to do this tonight. And you certainly can ask me questions if you have them.